The mountain did not care about your courage. It did not care about your strength. It did not care about how many battles you had won or how many enemies you had killed. Mount Targon had its own criteria, its own selection, its own way of deciding who was worthy. And that decision had nothing to do with what anyone else thought. A girl stood at the summit, surrounded by the unconscious bodies of the men who had come to execute her. The sun was still fading from the sky. The light was still settling, and she was unharmed. Not because she had fought them, because something far older than any of them had decided she should live. Her name was Leona, and the sun had chosen her before she had chosen it. Subscribe if you are new. A new League of Legends story every week. This one is about a warrior who refused to kill and became the most powerful fighter on the mountain. The Rakkor are a warrior people. This is not a description. It is the entire point of their existence. They live on the upper slopes of Mount Targon, not at the summit. The summit belongs to something else, but high enough that the world below looks small, high enough that the cold is constant, high enough that surviving is already an achievement. And they are proud of that survival. They train from childhood. Every child who can hold a weapon learns to use one. Every child who can run is taught to pursue and to evade. By the time a Rakkor child is old enough to be considered an adult, they have already been in more fights than most people see in a lifetime. They fight from adolescence. They die in battle if they are fortunate enough. And they are proud of all of it. War is not something the Rakkor do. War is something the Rakkor are. The Solari sit above the Rakkor. Not literally, though they do live higher on the mountain. The Solari are the Rakkor who heard a different call, not the call of combat, the call of the sun itself. Legend says the Solari were founded by a warrior, a fighter who could call down the pure power of the sun in battle. Not borrowed power, not channeled power, something that came from inside. From a connection between the warrior and the light itself. This fighter climbed to the highest point in Valoran, the place closest to the sun, and dedicated the rest of their life to it. The order they built became the Solari, the guardians of the tradition, the keepers of the belief that the founder's gift would one day return. Generation after generation, the Solari maintained the tradition. They maintained the ritual. They maintained the respect. They trained. They watched the summit. They performed the ceremonies. They kept the armor polished. They kept the ancient weapons ready. Just in case. Always just in case. But no one had been born with the founder's gift. Not once. Not in all the generations since. The tradition continued. The power had not returned. Until Leona. She was born into a Rakkor family. Traditional. Proud. Warriors in the bone. Her childhood friend was a boy named Pantheon. He was exactly what a Rakkor child was supposed to be. Fierce, aggressive, hungry for battle. The kind of boy who grew up correctly by every metric the Rakkor measured. Leona was not that. She was a problem from the beginning. Not because she could not fight. She could fight. She could fight very well. Better than most of her peers. Better, some said, than anyone her age. But she would not kill. Not willingly, not with the enthusiasm that the Rakkor valued. She had a different understanding of what a warrior was. Not an instrument of death. An instrument of protection. Not someone who breaks through. Someone who holds the line. Not offense, defense. Not taking lives, saving them. The Rakkor did not consider this a valid philosophy. The Rakkor considered this a failure. Then came the core. A ritual, a test, two young people of age, fighting for the right to carry a sacred weapon. One would carry it forward. One would not survive. This was the core. This was how the Rakkor worked. Leona refused to fight. She stood in the ritual circle. She looked at her opponent. He was not her enemy. He was just another young Rakkor who had been told this was the way things worked, who had been raised to believe that this ritual was necessary, who had been given no alternative framework for understanding what he was being asked to do. She felt no anger at him. She felt only the clarity of knowing what she would and would not do. She would not raise her weapon to kill him. She would not participate in a ritual that required a death to mean something. The Rakkor leadership watched. Their decision was not complicated. If she would not fight, she would die. The sentence was pronounced. The execution was ordered. She stood and waited. She did not run. She did not beg. She did not suddenly change her mind and decide that surviving was worth abandoning what she believed. This is the part that is worth understanding. She was not unafraid. She was not indifferent. She understood what was about to happen. She simply believed, more than she feared death, that some things cannot be abandoned. Some principles are worth more than survival. Some lines, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. And killing someone who had done nothing wrong, in a ritual designed to produce a corpse for abstus ceremony, was a line she would not cross, not for her own life, not for anything. She stood. And then the mountain made its decision. The sun flared, not the ordinary warming of a high-altitude morning, something else entirely. Light flooded the summit, pure, total, overwhelming. The kind of light that is not just brightness, the kind that carries weight, the kind that is, in some way that the people caught in it could not explain afterward, aware. When it faded, Leona was standing. Everyone else was not. The men who had come to execute her were on the ground, unconscious, unhurt, but completely incapable of finishing what they had started. She was untouched. The sun had held her. The Solari saw what had happened. They knew what it meant. They had been waiting for this. For generations. For the one who would carry the Founder's gift again. They went to the Rakkor leadership. They made one demand. Withdraw the execution order. She is ours. The Solari took her in. They gave her the golden armor of the order. They gave her the sword and shield passed down from the ancient sun warrior of legend. The weapons that had waited. For the right hands. For the right warrior. She put them on and felt something settle into place. Not a weight, a purpose. The armor fit as if it had been made for her. Not because it had, because she had been made for it. She trained under the Solari. She learned to use what the sun had given her. The light responded to her, naturally, immediately, without resistance, like it had been waiting, like it knew her. Not as a weapon of destruction, as an instrument of protection, as a shield between light and darkness, as the thing that holds the line. What had gotten her condemned by the Rakkor was exactly what made her perfect for what she Habakar became, the refusal to kill without purpose. The belief that strength was for protection, not destruction. The understanding that a warrior's truest test was not how many enemies they could cut down, but whether the people behind them were still standing when it was over. The sun had seen this in her, before she could prove it. Before anyone else would believe it. The mountain had its own criteria, and by the mountain's measure, she had always been exactly what was needed. She trained, she learned, she became. The Solari had maintained the tradition without the power for generations. They had kept the rituals, they had kept the order, they had kept the belief that the Founder's gift would return. Even as decades became centuries and no one came, even as the armor sat waiting, even as the sword and shield of the ancient sun warrior gathered the dust of generations, they kept faith. And now the power had returned. Now the tradition had a champion who could actually fulfill what the Founder had promised. A warrior who could call down the sun. Who could stand in the path of darkness and not yield. Who understood, at the deepest level, what a shield was actually for. She was not the warrior the Rakkor had tried to make. She was the warrior Mount Targon had been waiting for. The Rakkor would not forget what had happened. A girl they had condemned had been claimed by the sun. The order they had given had been overruled. Not by another person, not by a higher authority within their own hierarchy. By the mountain itself. By the power the Solari had been serving for generations. It was not comfortable. It was not supposed to be. That was, in its own way, the point. The mountain did not ask the Rakkor whether they approved. The mountain made its choice. And the Rakkor had to live with it. Leona did not carry triumph from this. She did not walk away from the Solari's acceptance with the satisfaction of someone who had been proved right. She walked away with responsibility, with weight, with the understanding that what the sun had given her was not a reward, it was a charge, a purpose, a reason. She had been given extraordinary power, not to use it for herself, to stand between the light and whatever wanted to extinguish it. This was what she had always believed. Now she had the means to actually do it. And when the darkness came, when whatever the mountain stood against finally moved toward the light, she would be there, armor shining, shield raised, the sun at her back. Ready. She had always been ready. From the moment she refused to kill, from the moment she chose protection over destruction, from the moment the sun saw what she was and decided the world needed to see it too, she had been right. About all of it. The mountain had agreed. Now it was time to prove it. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. Every week, a new League of Legends lore. The ones the Chi-Sun chose.